Hey guys, how you doing?
We're good, thank you.
Are we waiting on anybody else to join?
Hi, it's Delia. I think we're all set here. My group's here.
Okay.
Okay, there's four of us in the community room as well.
Okay, great.
7 people in the education room.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I was looking for something here. Okay. All right, so I'm sorry about that. My name is Brendan Cole. I'm an RN and a senior implementation manager with CareEfficient. Been with them for several years now. I'm going to help you through all the clinical training for this home health training. And to start with, I'm going to go over a patient encounter today, and we'll kind of see how far we end up getting, because on the last 2 trainings we kind of ended up in 2 different points, but we'll probably land somewhere around there. So what we'll probably end up covering is the patient encounter and all the valuable information in there, other than doing the orders, frequencies, and durations, and then adding service notes. So we'll see how far we get. As people are joining, please mute your lines, or I'm going to end up muting them myself because we do get some feedback. If you do have a question, you can chat with me in the chat box. I will open that up right now and move it over here. So if you guys do have some questions, you can stop me on the way or kind of type them in on the way. I will stop periodically and ask if you guys have some questions as well. Yeah, Molly, go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to thank everybody for being here for this first RN training, and just kind of give a little bit of information in terms of, you don't need your tablet with you. It's better just to really watch the screen, pay attention to what Brendan's doing, listen to the language, there's a new vocabulary in CareEfficient. It's different from McKesson. This is a very intuitive software. And the more that you can just watch this and then go back into the training modules, go back in, look at your princess or prince patient that has been set up for you, the better it is. And to just really listen, this is a lot of information. We will have more time to practice, and we're here to support you in every way to make this as smooth as possible. We know it's going to be bumpy, but it's going to be like, you know, not creamy peanut butter, but not double chunk peanut butter either. It's going to be that in between. So there'll be some bumps in the road, but we will get it.
And you have our backs.
100%. And the wonderful thing about CareFicient is that the changes to somebody's account, permissions, different charts in here, tables in here is easily done. So it's not a big process. And so just keep that in mind, that we're working with you guys to make sure that it's as easy for you as possible. The process will be different. The outcome of quality healthcare, absolutely the same. The process will be different. So don't try to say, oh, well, I do it this way in McKesson and I want to do it that same way in CareFicient. We're getting rid of McKesson for a reason.
Hallelujah.
Yeah. So I'm done, Brendan. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. That's funny. Okay, so I am going to show you the online version today of CareFicient. This is where all the magic happens. This is where most of your work is going to take place. Our website is ams.careficientinc.com. You might bookmark that, make it easily accessible, maybe even make it a homepage for one of your browsers. Your org code is always going to be the same. It will never change. It's going to be LMVH 3106. Your username could be your email address or your first initial last name. Just kind of depends on where it was at when they gave you web access. As long as you do have an email attached to your associate file, when they do give you web access, it's going to email you a temporary password, and I just recommend copying and pasting that into this password field versus trying to type those characters. It tends to work better. And then the only other thing before I move on, if you forget your password after you've initially got it set up, you do have the option to click Forgot Password. If you have an email address attached to your associate file, it will email you that same welcome letter with the temporary password in it to your email address on file. And then you, again, just copy and paste it into the field here. If you don't have an email address attached to your file, they will have to tell you what your username is and what your password, temporary password will be. Use those credentials to log in that first time. And you won't see it here, but for the very first time and anytime you reset your password, you're going to get a following screen where you'll re-enter the old password and then create your new password, and then you have to type it in again to confirm that, and then you'll be set. I think it's going to ask you about every 90 days to reset your password. So anyway, when you sign in, and by the way, my screen is zoomed in so you guys can see it a little bit better, but things may look a little bit more out of place than what it might look on your screen. So things do kind of move around depending on if you're zoomed in or zoomed out in your screen. So this is your home screen. You can see here you're going to have a calendar. These are going to have all of your patients for those days. And I will get to how you add service notes via clicking on them here in a little bit. But you'll see all of your visits here. And over here to the left, you're going to see some announcements. These announcements can be put out by your administrators. They could be put out by CareFicient. Both of them would be important to read. CareFicient, sometimes it may be something that doesn't apply to your agency type. Maybe it's a hospice type thing, or, you know, so it may not always apply to you, but just please read it. Every Thursday, well, I say every Thursday now because it is every Thursday. Normally every other Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, we do enhancements and upgrades to the system. Currently, we have them scheduled for the next 4 weeks in a row, so it's sometimes we do it every Thursday, or we'll throw in some extra Thursdays in between. But anyway, be aware when we do go into the system, sometimes you may have slowed performance or be temporarily denied access to the system. On those days that we announce that, just save and close any work that you're doing right before that time, just so you don't lose tons of documentation or something. It's rare, but it is possible that you may lose some. If you were to try to hit save or approve or something right when we got in there, there might be that potential, and I just don't want anybody to ever have to get that, have that frustration of redocumenting an hour's worth of stuff. So do that. Just save and close right before that, and then if you can log in, it usually only takes 5-10 minutes. You can log in after that, and you get in, you're probably good to go to keep working. So, but just be aware of those announcements. There are sometimes pop-up announcements in the middle of your screen when you first log in. There's a little checkbox at the bottom that will show you that says "Do not show again." If you check that, it will disappear, and you will still see it over here under the announcements column, but it won't keep popping up on your screen. So if you don't click that, you just cancel out of that pop-up and go somewhere else, it's going to keep popping up over and over again until you click that checkbox. So you can click Read More to be able to see the full announcement. If there's more than one, they'll be stacked on top of each other, and you can be able to read more on each one. There is a reports and options link that you guys may see. Just to let you know, this is different reports in the system that you may or may not have access to. And then there's little question marks next to it. If you click on that, it opens a help document and tells you what it's about and how to run it. You guys probably won't need this, but it is out there. The office staff will probably use that the most. Don't worry about this EVV access thing here. You can jump to different schedules if you wanted to. You can also go to different patient encounters if you want to. This is one way of doing it. You can just search their name or open the drop-down box, and you'll see all the different patients in there. Or you can just type in that name and search for them, which is a little bit easier. Based on your security role, you're probably not going to see this invoices one or associates one. So the things that you can see and have access to are just 100% based off your role. So just FYI, things may look a little bit different than my screen. So that's why I'm kind of commenting on them. The other actions, you guys wouldn't be adding referral sources. There is a directions and mapping link that will take your schedule for that day, and it pulls those patient addresses into a mapping program, and you can kind of move them up and down in which order you're going to see your patients, and it will literally create a map for you so that you can follow. Uploaded service notes, you guys shouldn't be needing to see this too often. Probably the office staff will end up having to use this, if anything. If a service note was entered on an app offline and then uploaded, if something doesn't match, like the visit service code or the clinician's name on that service, then it goes into this little queue where we can correct those services, attach the service notes, and put them back. So that's what that's about. And the attach uploaded service notes, it's kind of the same thing. It just depends on if you have any issues with them uploading in general. Now, when you document online, it's all online, so you don't have to worry about any of this uploaded stuff. You can add pay-only codes here, and then if your agency does educational documents and they set those up and have that documentation in their settings, then you guys would be able to access that education maybe for different disease processes or programs that you may be teaching the patient. So that's your home screen. What I'm going to do now is go into a patient encounter and show you what that looks like. A fast way to do that, you can click on this test, your patient's name, any of the visits. If you have, even if you have multiple, you can just click on any of them. You're going to get a menu, and one of the ways to go to the encounter is just click on View Patient Encounter. That's the fastest way. You also, of course, can use this patient link here to go to their encounter. And up at the top, there's the patient menus. You can go to patient encounters that way. Just see if you go this way, you have to do searches and everything else. That's why I always recommend just clicking on the calendar. If they're not on your calendar, of course, you would have to go this direction to search for the patient or that other link on the left-hand side of that calendar. So anything that's kind of an orange link, just FYI, or orange font, is going to be a link that takes you somewhere. I'm going to click on the patient's name, and it's going to take me directly into their encounter. And this is what the patient chart looks like. Up at the top, in this kind of little grayed out area above the tabs, you can see this no matter which tab you're opened underneath. But it's going to have the patient's name, some different options next to that name, and we'll go through those in a minute. You'll see the patient phone number. If you hover over these address books, you can see their phone number or their address and additional phone numbers if they have any listed. Their primary physician is going to be listed here, and this is a fake one, but if they had contact information, they would also have their phone number listed here and a phone book. And if you hovered over that phone book, you could get fax numbers and addresses and stuff as well. As you are developing and creating the plan of care and entering all this information into the counter, this stuff will start populating. We haven't got that far yet, but you'll see allergies up here, important notes. So these notes are entered under the Notes tab, which we'll hit in a minute, but these are important ones that may have real pertinent information your agency wants you to know about this patient before you treat them. If there's a lot of notes, you can click on the little magnifying glass icon, and you'll be able to view all of those important notes as well. You're going to see what agency they're listed in, their started care date. If there's not a date here, it's because they're not activated yet. Their primary diagnosis would be listed here to the right of this icon. We don't have one entered yet, so it's not being displayed, but you'll see that throughout the training. If you click on the little magnifying glass next to the primary diagnosis, it'll actually show you all the additional diagnosis codes that this patient has as well. Their disaster level is going to be up in here. The advanced directives, and then whatever narrative is in for that advanced directive will be, that verbiage will be right here. You're going to see their DNR status, date of birth, their age. If they were discharged, that date would be entered here. And then for the status, you're going to see the status of this encounter. So it can be in a pending status if they haven't been admitted and activated yet. It could be active, could be on hold. They could be discharged, or they could be a non-admit. For the home health side, hospice has some other options too. But you'll see that information right here. Down below, under all these tabs, we're going to go through these one by one. The profile tab is where it's going to have, under the personal, it's going to have basic demographics for that patient, their name, date of birth. Please double check the spelling, make sure everything's correct. Their medical record number would be there. You do have the option and ability to upload pictures of your patients if your agency chooses to do that. And then you can identify different characteristics, and these are customizable in the settings as well. I think right now we just have different armed forces in there, but you could pick different characteristics. You could add to the setting, Spanish speaking only, things like that, and put that characteristic to this patient so that you guys can identify that kind of information. So that's how that is used. Under the right side of this tab is the current encounter. This is information about this encounter. So a patient, when you first admit them into the system, it's going to be their first encounter. You discharge and readmit that patient. It increases that encounter number by 1 every time you do it. So in which case the verbal start of care, address, all of this information could be different, or would be, especially the start of care, would be different for each encounter. And every encounter is going to be searchable, and things do flow from one encounter to another if you want it to. But you're going to get information like their residence, their county, referral source, referral phone number, admission source, admission type, their DNR status, agency name here, agency type. Of course, you see that up at top too. And then down here, this is for value-based purchasing, so I don't think you guys are required to do that yet. but be aware if it does happen there, you guys will be able to answer the VBP questions as well for value-based purchasing. If any of this information needs to be edited, or you need to add the DNR status or advanced directive narrative, you can click on edit. When you activate the patient, this is the exact same screen you're going to get, but you can also edit this information if needed. So here's where you're going to edit the DNR status. You have a drop-down which has all the different options here. And then for their advanced directive narrative, this is where you would type that. So if they have a specific narrative about their advanced directive, you can enter that here. And if you were to adjust any of this information, just hit save. So this is the profile tab. The contacts tab on the left side, this is where the patient's address and phone numbers are going to be. There could be more than one phone number entered, even more than one address if needed. This will probably be entered upon intake, but you guys may need to address this information as well. If something was misspelled or the phone number, you need to just add a phone number and there was an address already here, you could edit and then edit that information or add those additional phone numbers. So you can just choose now, maybe you want to add the phone, a mobile phone. You can just hit add. Now, anytime you guys add phone numbers to your patients, even if they only have one phone number, mark the checkbox next to under preferred next to one of them, even if it's only the one number. That way this number shows up here in the patient encounter, and it also pulls to your disaster reports as it needs to be. So just be aware. And then if you make any changes here, of course, hit save, and that will update this information here. The patient contact side is for family members, caregivers, next of kin, power of attorneys, contacts like that. These aren't required, but they really help with coordination of care, so you guys can add any contacts that you want so that they are available to find. To add one, you would just click on Add Patient Contact. It's going to open up this window where you can address the relationship type. You can address the contact type. The only thing you have to have is anything with an orange asterisk is bare minimum to move forward. So in this situation, you would need to choose the relationship type, and then you can type in their name, their last name, and that's the bare minimum. And then you can enter this other information if you want. Then you can hit continue, and then this is where you can add their address and phone number. Now, sometimes you don't need the address for the patient contacts, just the phone number. So even though there is an orange asterisk here, when it's patient contacts, it disregards this. It'll just save with what you have. So when you're adding an address, you just pick whether it's the home address, mailing work. 99% of the time, you're going to just do home address, enter the address. Now, it does check to make sure the zip code matches the state and things like that. So if you get any errors, just make sure you didn't miskey anything, and then you would hit save. And then that information would be over here. Okay, and you can always go back in and edit it. You can delete them if they no longer apply, things like that. So the Notes tab, this is where they're going to enter notes, those important notes that do show up up here above the tabs. They'll be entered in here as well, but those ones will be displayed up here as well. Then you have different note types. The ones we have in there now are like scheduling notes, caregiver, COVID-19, directions, night triage note, telephone note, different notes like this. This is internal communication about the patient. It is not a service note. This is not your normal documentation for a visit. This is just internal communication about things you want people to know about. To add a note, you would choose Add Note over here. For the note types, again, this is all customizable as well, but you can pick which note type you want to choose, and then just type in the verbiage for that note in the box right here. Hit save, and then that note will be saved here. We're starting to get a lot of them in here. Other things, that you might see in here are anytime you fax something out of this encounter, which is basically like your med list or physician's orders, you'll get a note in here. It's an automated note that says who did that action and what that was that they faxed. So in this case, it was a med list, and I could just click on that to view the actual med list or download it and view it. So there will be automated notes for faxing things out, and then as well as when something is uploaded into the patient encounter as well, you're going to get a note saying that. You can filter to the specific note types that you're looking for. So if you're only looking for some scheduling notes, you can filter to those or only the general notes or your triage notes, etc. You can filter down to any note type. You can filter from when it was entered, the to and from dates. So if you're looking at last episode's notes and you're concerned with those only, you can enter the date range and filter down to those that were entered at that time. You can also search a keyword. This is going to search the words, that verbiage that's in that notes section. I mean, it would filter it down to just those notes. You can export this list in PDF and spreadsheet formats if you guys ever needed to. The other thing you can do here is you can deactivate them if you have privileges to do so. You can deactivate them, and it will remove that that note. Maybe it no longer applies. If it was a scheduling note and the patient moved, you might want to get rid of the old scheduling, or excuse me, direction note. You may want to get rid of that and add a new one, things like that. If you click on the show inactive, you can click on that and hit search, and then any inactive notes will be displayed here. And then if you need to reactivate it, you can click the little blue back arrow icon, and it will reactivate that note. So that's pretty much all the functions of this note tab. You can, again, there could be quite a few notes in here, so those filters really do help out as far as trying to find what you're looking for. On all of your patients, brand new admits going directly into Care Efficient after your go live date, put in as new referrals, they will have a referral tab, but all of the transition patients that you guys have on service now, currently, that we are transitioning into Care Efficient, they will not have a referral tab. So just be aware of that. If you don't see it, it's because they're a transition patient, nothing's wrong. This referral should be entered upon intake. They'll write this information up. So you will get some information. Some agencies will send these out. They'll either print these or fax these to the physicians to actually get signed, part of the conditions of participation. Some of them actually just use the 485 still. As long as it's done timely, either one is fine. But they'll manage this in office. But you can get good information as far as who the referral source is and their phone number. And if there was a referral source contact, you would get their information here. So if there was a case manager involved with the patient in a hospital before they were discharged and you needed to contact that case manager, you could identify that information here. There's a referral order tracking section. This is to track sent and received dates if needed. And then here's some more referral information. And this may or may not have a lot of information in it. It depends on how much they're doing, because a lot of times they're going to get a referral over on a fax machine, and it may be lengthy or whatever. So there is an ability to upload that to the Documents tab, and I'll get there in a second. So sometimes they'll just write something like C, uploaded referral. It just depends on what your agency chooses to use. These orders don't physically, none of this information flows anywhere else. It's all just for the referral, and that's it. So just be aware of that. But you might see diet information and other stuff here. But there's another place for that you may find that information, and it's over here in the Documents tab. So we're going to move on to the Physician Facility tab. This is where you're going to identify the primary physician, or even add the physicians if you need to. And this is where you're going to have all of your other physicians involved in the patient care. You do have to add any physician that you are trying to send and receive orders to. You do have to add them here. before you can ever switch an order to send it to somebody other than the primary. To add a physician, whether there was one in here or not, you'll see this link saying add physician, and you can type in their first or last name, or you can just even hit search and it'll just show all of the physicians. You can click a checkbox next to the one you're wanting to add. For sequence, you can put number 1. This is the most important thing to know. Number 1 is your primary physician. So if you ever add physicians to an encounter, make sure that you don't mess with the primary, whoever that is. So you can just move that to the second position, or you can leave that blank and it automatically will add this in the second position. And you can add as many as you want, and if you don't put a sequence in there, a specific sequence, it just keeps kind of putting them below each other. You can identify the physician type, and then you would just hit save once you find them. Okay, and then it adds them down here. You do have the ability to move them to the primary position if needed. You can just hit this little top button or icon and it moves them up to this primary spot. Just be aware that this primary physician, this is the one whose MPI is going to go out on your OASIS. It's who all of your orders are initially going to default to. This is the most important position of the physician, so just don't move them around unless you're absolutely certain that it needs moved. The last facility stay prior to start of care, it's again for coordination of care. It's just so you guys can identify what facility they came from before being discharged to the community. So it's, again, so if you need to contact that facility for any reason or just, have that knowledge for any reason, it would be right here. Okay, this is the Documents tab. There's 2 functions here. There's a Forms function, and there's the Documents function. I know this sounds similar. The forms are electronic forms. These are going to be like consents and agreements, your normal home health, CMS forms like the ABN, HHCCN, the NOMNOX, and so on. So to add a form, you just click on Add Form. And some of these are set up for patients to sign, and some of them are just set up for you to sign. It just depends on what kind of form it is. Of course, all your Medicare forms are going to be for the patient to sign as well. But we do have things like this, infection control forms, incident reports. These forms are customizable. These lists are customizable based off active forms. So, it's a pretty good system for that kind of stuff. But to add it, just pick your form type from the drop-down, hit Continue, and then this is the inside of the form. Now, and you're going to see this in service notes too. This is very similar. Everything kind of looks the same, just different questions and answers. You're going to see these little round buttons. These are radio buttons. That means it's single select. You can only pick one or the other. It will not let you pick multiple. Then you have text boxes that you can enter any text that you need to. If it's a date, we usually set it up as a date, so you'll see a calendar on it, and you can just pick, click on the calendar and pick the date instead of, or you can just type it completely in the field, either one. The other fields that you might see, there's excuse me, there's these larger text boxes. Those have little 2 lines in the bottom right corner. That's so you can kind of drag and drop it. You may be typing up a large narrative, and sometimes that's difficult to do if you're only seeing a couple lines of it at a time. So you can open it up so you can see quite a few more of your narrative. If you see these little square boxes, these are multi-select, so that means you can pick all that apply. What you would normally do is fill out this form completely. When you're done filling out the form is when you're going to click on Apply Signatures. When you click on Apply Signatures, it does gray out the form because now the patient's fixing to sign, so you're not going to be able to edit this again unless you remove the patient's signatures and your signature, and then make those changes and then have them sign again. and that's for obvious reasons. We don't want to change forms that have already been signed. Once you click that apply signatures, if the patient is required to sign the form, you'll see this link here. It says patient responsible party signature. Just click on that and it will open up a window, pop-up window with a field that they can sign in. So you do have to have touchscreen devices for this. And then choose accept. You could clear it if it didn't turn out right and then re-sign it, but then when you get a good signature, choose accept. And then for your signature, you're going to click on the agency representative signature. And your signature is a little bit different. When you very first sign anything in Care Efficient, it will default to this real pretty cursive legible signature with your full credentials. It's going to pull that from your associate file. You could type it in and change that here. You do want it to, have your full credentials, full name. You could hit use, and that'll update that signature. You do have an ability to upload like a PNG file of your signature, but that doesn't always work depending on the size of that file or the size of that signature. It may not fit on the service notes and things like that. So this, I don't see this used too often, but it's available. Or you can even draw your own signature. So if you wanted to clear that out, you can hit draw and then sign your own signature just like the patient would. And again, when the first time you sign anything, this little checkbox down here is going to say save my signature for future use. Go ahead and leave that checked and then hit accept. And then every time you sign anything, whether it's a form or a service note or an order, or med profile, anything that you guys got to sign, this same exact window will pop up. It'll already have your signature here, no matter which one you chose to use after you saved it. And then all you'll have to do is hit accept, and then you're done. Now, these signatures are time-stamped. You don't see it right now, but they are visible when you print this form out. While you're in here, filling out forms or service notes or orders or anything that you guys are doing, if you don't hit like save and continue or something that sends us a little bit of information, we don't know when it's ready and it's ready to be saved. So you could be typing up a very large thing to minimize potential data loss. It's always good to hit save and continue every now and then so that we get this information. If there was some kind of a glitch and you spent an hour filling this out, typing something up, you wouldn't want to have to retype that. So at least hit save and continue every now and then so that information is saved. If it's a short form like this, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that. But we don't get that information. Yeah.
I have a question. I thought
Sure.
there was an embedded auto save every 7 minutes.
There is for certain things in there, and it depends on what's turned on for your agency. And we can double check those because there's one for service notes, there's one for orders, and I don't know that there's one for forms. So in the service note aspect, yeah, the service note and orders, there is an autosave function that will, every now and then you'll see your screen kind of flicker. It'll put up a little banner that says autosave is in progress, and it will save that information. Now, just be aware, once it goes into doing that mode and you see it kind of flicker, just stop typing because it's already, it's not going to have saved that information yet. So once it's done flickering and it comes back to your form and you get that banner saying autosave has been completed, then you can go ahead and finish typing up everything and you'll see what it had saved and what it didn't save.
Okay, but we need to just check. It may not be in the form, so we'll check that on the backside.
Yeah, well, I'm going to make a note of that and make sure autosave is turned on for everything that it's available for.
Thank you.
And on your service, and when you're in your service notes, we're not going to get to it yet. You're only going to have a short section, basically for each, respiratory assessment, cardiac assessment. So you're basically going to have a section for each thing. And every time to flip through the section, you're going to end up hitting next and previous and stuff. That sends us the information. So It's a little bit different in service notes as well, but we'll talk about that when we get to there. You do have the option to save and close if you needed to, for some reason, come back into it and finish it. Just remember, you can't edit this once you've applied the signatures, but you can just get back into it by clicking on the edit pencil right next to that note. And then there's the complete link at the top. You can hit complete, or if you needed to cancel, complete it. If you didn't make any changes, you can just cancel out of it. But mark it as complete when it's done. You'll see it's in a complete status, and if you need to view that, you can click on the printer icon, and it'll open up a PDF that you can print out or fax or whatever you needed to do with it, or you even just save it to your computer. Other options that you do have is there is an option to add additional signatures. These would be care-efficient users, so clinicians or office staff, but other people can sign off on these forms as well if you needed additional signatures. And then you can remove these additional signatures. That's how the forms work. The only downside I think to them is that you got to give them a copy, and most people don't have printers with them, so you usually have to go back out there on the next visit or something. But your agency will give you that process. The documents section. This is where you're going to find a lot of important information, especially like for the referrals. If they did get a referral over on the fax, they're going to end up scanning it in the office and uploading it to this patient encounter. So you'll be able to find that information under this Documents tab. To view the files, you can just click on the document description. Depending on the file type in your browser settings, it may try to download the file, and then you can open it up with the appropriate app. Or if it's if it's a PDF file and your browser's set to open PDFs automatically, when you click on it, it will just pop open a PDF of that file. So there could be anything here: pictures of wounds, your referral orders, lab results that they've gotten. All the signed orders are actually going to start displaying in here after they have uploaded them. So you can see all the signed physician orders, just anything that's involved. I mean, a picture of their Medicare card or something might be uploaded if that's legal, but anything you can be uploaded here. You do have the option to download multiple files. There'll be checkboxes next to each file, and you can check all that apply, and then hit download, print selected files, and it'll download them in a batch, and you can open those up. That's pretty much it for the Documents tab. The Clinical tab. This is where you're going to be able to identify clinical teams. So if you have somebody in the office help managing that care, they can be identified here. So you can identify a case manager and a clinical manager, so that the staff know who to contact about this patient if there's an issue or a question. There's also an ability to add an entire clinical team, so you could pick every associate that's involved in the care and then put a checkbox next to who the primary discipline is and hit save, and they will all be displayed here. So some agencies will use that to identify entire teams that are taking care of the patient. Specialty skills. This works in two ways. You can obviously identify the patient as being, requiring a certain skill, like pediatrics, wound care, Hoyer lift, just whatever you guys want to add to the settings. And the way this also works is you can assign a skill to a clinician. So if you have a specific pediatric nurse or a specific wound care nurse, you can identify those skills with those nurses, and then when you go to assign visits to the clinicians, it moves them to the top of the list, saying that they're the best match. So that's kind of how that works. The vendors, if your agency wants to add vendors to the settings, you can track vendors for this patient. Disaster plans. These, on your transition patients, have to be manually entered directly on the Clinical tab. On all your new admits, and then moving forward, there's actually a question in your start of care note, what disaster level they are and the plan details, and that maps it to the Clinical tab right here. And in addition to that, it maps to your 485. After 2018, disaster plans are required on the 485. So that's why it maps to it. Consents and notices, this grid here, it just automatically updates based off when they upload a label, a document as the assignment of benefits, patient signature, or release information. It'll show when it was uploaded and update this information. For vital sign perimeters, I'm going to delete these real fast and start from scratch. These do have to be added directly to the clinical tab on your new admits and your transition patients. There's not a way to add these from the service note. So you will need to come to this clinical tab, scroll down here to vital sign parameters, and you're going to see this link to add default vitals. You'll click on that, and then it's going to pull the default scale that's set up in your settings. I mean, again, that's adjustable as well, but on top of that, you can make it patient specific and adjust these by either hitting the up and down arrows, or you can just type in the actual number in this field. And so this works in two ways too. These will flow to your 485 as well for your doctor to sign for those parameters. And then they also, when you're inside of a service note documenting your vital signs, if anything falls out of this range, you're going to end up seeing a little red asterisk with a white exclamation point, or a little red icon with a white exclamation point in it next to the vital sign. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you the range should have been between 96.5 and 101. It doesn't give you any errors because it could truly be outside of its range, but it gives you a heads up, hey, the doctor signed for these ranges. You need to call the doctor since it's outside of the range. So it tells you right then and there, and you better address that in your documentation. Some of these may not apply to your patients, like the blood sugars, the weight, O2 sats may not be applicable for your patients. So to get rid of those, just hit save and then come over here and hit the trash can next to it. It will give you a pop-up window that you have to confirm you want to delete that. On the vital signs, you can add them back in without any problem. On anything else in the system, if you delete it, it's gone forever. We don't have like a trash can or recycle bin we can go look for this stuff at. So you just get rid of them, the ones that don't apply, and leave the ones that do. And that's it for the vital signs. And again, it works both those ways, so it's really cool. The DMEs, this is more for hospice, so ignore this. That's where they're going to track when they provide DMEs, and these do not map to your orders, so ignore this for home health. For advanced directives, this is where you'll enter that information. Again, the advanced directive narrative is on the profile tab, but the advanced directive itself, you'll enter it here on the clinical tab. And you got also the other options of healthcare, power of attorney, living will, and organ donors as well. So you can track that information there. Vaccines, you can track vaccinations. To do that, just choose Add Vaccines, find the vaccine in the list, and the date they got that vaccine, and hit save. And then you know when they were last vaccinated. Programs, this can be used for your agency for different things. If your agency does different programs for your patients, I know a lot of therapy have different like loud programs and things like that they may perform for the patients. This is one way to identify them. And then also some agencies use this to identify community-based programs such as Meals on Wheels or home health, adult daycares, things like that. So if you guys wanted to, now these programs would need to be added to the settings so that you have them available here to choose from. Same with vendors and everything. Everything needs to be in the settings. Up here where it says disciplines, anytime there's an order written for any discipline at all, or any discipline is scheduled for this patient at all, it's going to give you a list of all those disciplines right here. So this is just a quick view of who all is involved in the care, not who specifically, but what disciplines. So just kind of helpful information there. The meds tab. I'm going to spend a lot of time on here. There's a lot that this can do, and there's a lot that you need to know about it. Okay, so obviously you have the option to add meds, and we're going to go through all these functions, but you can add medications, add medication kits. This is more for hospice. You can print medication profiles, and you can print it with all the different information that you want. And approved medication profile, you can fax these med profiles to anybody. If they got admitted to a hospital or facility and you need to get them, they need the med list, you can fax this directly to them. If there's an approval history that exists, you'll see a drop-down box with approval history. And I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the status, when you first come here, and usually this drop-down box is over here by the word status, but it got moved over here. When you first come to the meds tab, it's always going to default to active. But if you wanted to look at the inactive meds or all of them together, you can filter to either one of those. And then there's the option to mass inactivate, which is also more of a hospice thing. So let's go through these and talk about them. Add medication, to add a medication. Now, keep in mind, when you're inside your service note, the edit mode of your service note, you're going to have a meds tab at the top of your service note, and it's identical to this. So when I'm talking about it here, it's the same as what's in the service note, and which is really neat. That used to, you had to save and close your note, then go to the meds tab, add your meds. Now you can do it all without leaving your service note. So click on Add Medication. You're going to get this pop-up window, and initially you're going to put them in as either existing meds or new meds, whatever the scenario is. After they've been added, you're going to have an option to change the dosage, and you're going to have an option to discontinue them. So initially when you put them in, choose whether it's new or existing. Type in part or all of the spelling of that med in the description field and hit the drop-down box. This is the Lexicomp drug database. It's one of the biggest in the country. It's typically going to have all the meds on how they're manufactured and supplied. Now, of course, it may be one of those scenarios where it's half a tab. That's where you're going to end up entering that information under the patient dosage and frequency. Now, you want to, as best you can, pick a med from this list. If you do not pick a med from this list, we will not be able to get any of the drug-to-drug interaction information or patient education and things like that. And there are times you have to do that, and I'll explain. So even if this is just slightly off, as long as it's the correct medication, then you can actually, after you click on it, you can come over here and adjust that dosage if needed, if it truly is supplied by the manufacturer in a different way. And then again, if it's a full tab, half tab, whatever, you would address that here. The route will also pull from that list, but you could change that if needed. Enter the start date, of course, the start date of the actual medication or prescription. And you do have the option to identify the type, whether it's alternative, herbal, over-the-counter, or prescription, and who prescribes it, who administers it, whether it's the facility staff, family, healthcare surrogate, or the patient takes it on their own. And then you can enter additional comments about this medication as well. But be aware, these comments will flow to your orders. They'll flow to your 485s, your clinical updates, anything that has a med on it, it will flow. These comments will flow. So be careful what you say. You can identify your pharmacy, which is really, really helpful. I really try to encourage this with everybody. That way, when you're communicating with the physician about this med and he asks you about the pharmacy, you have this reference information here.
And Brendan, on this, I want the team to know that when they're doing this, if there's a pharmacy that we use a lot that's not on the list, you need to just let us know because we can add it in. This is something we have control of. So hospice was missing a bunch of pharmacies and we put them in for them. So just let us know when you see this, if there's one you don't see that you need.
Yeah, I guarantee you're going to have some. And when you guys, and I know the field nurses are not going to be doing this part, but just so Molly, all of y'all know, when you put them in under the resources, whatever the title of it is, if you put CVS, that's what's going to show up here. So if you have 40 CVSs that you guys are going to add, they'll see 40 CVSs here. So I always recommend, you know, putting in like CVS at I-40 in Bell, you know, the Walmart at I-40 in Georgia, you know, something like that, identifying it in the name so that the staff can easily identify it. Now, once it's added, you'll get the actual address and contact information for that pharmacy, and I'll show you that here in a minute. If this was a med that the physician was notified about, you can choose that they were notified, who was notified, and then approved by. You're going to pick your name there. If it was a verbal order that you guys are writing this med as, because it's going to be the repeated and verified by, the effective date, et cetera. Now, if this is like a new admit, or if you're doing meds right before research, addressing meds, or really this anytime after your starter care has been completed and the 485 has been sent to the physician, anytime you add a medication or make changes to those medications, you need to create an interim order to send to the physician to notify them of the changes. So you do have the ability to create an interim order. Now, when your 485 on your starter care is still open and in initiated or open status, it's not been approved or sent to the physician, then these will automatically flow to that order. So on a starter care, you don't have to worry about creating interim orders. It's only after, if it's been added after the fact. You do have the option to hit save and add, save and close, or cancel. You can hit save and add if you have an additional med to add. If this is the last med, always hit save and close. And I recommend if this patient has 20 meds, I would hit save and close after like every 3, 4, I'd probably do it after every about 5, just because you don't want to spend all this time entering 20 meds into the encounter and then something happened and you lose them all. I'd rather lose 3 or 4 than 20 of them. So that's just my personal preference, but I think it's good advice for you guys. So I'm going to save and add one here. I'm actually going to do a couple. You can fill out the minimum information is the orange asterisk, but all the rest of this information is extremely beneficial. So I mentioned to you that there may be times that you can't find a med in that list, or it may be something that you need to add to your med profile that's not in the drug database. So when you do that, when you choose to add that medication, I'm going to use the one I always use. Oxygen is not considered a drug or medication from any drug database in the world. It's more of a DME, if anything. So there is no information in the system for oxygen, and you're going to see this with like wound care supplies and things as well, and in sometimes compounded meds, things like that. You may have to do overrides in here. The bad thing about doing an override is it's going to disable drug-to-drug interactions and patient education information, but sometimes you have to do that. So if you typed in oxygen and hit the drop-down, you'll see some similar spelling meds, but you will not find oxygen anywhere in here. So in that case, especially with oxygen, don't even worry about hitting the drop-down, or if you did, just click off of it, and then just start manually entering this information. And again, you can choose the type, all that good stuff, and who prescribed it. I'm going to kind of skip that. But this time, when you try to add this med, you're going to get a warning right here saying the medication you enter cannot be found in the medication database. Click here to add unknown medication to encounter. So you're going to click on that link. You're going to get another warning saying, warning, adding this medication will disable warnings and interaction information. That's only for this one med because there's no information to pull from. I mean, it's not in the database. So in that case, you just go ahead and read it, say, okay, save and close, and then it's going to be added as an overridden med. So this will still flow to your orders. You can still create interim orders when you add overridden meds. You're just not going to get any drug-to-drug interaction information. Oh. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. You might get, you're not going to see any icons on the overridden meds or the printer icon, and you're not going to have any of the additional options that you normally would have. in the pop-up menu here. Okay, so that's how you add meds. Oh, real quick, we'll go through some now that we have some. There are alerts. The icons, the little triangles with the exclamation point in it, that's for warnings for this med, just this one med. It will give you sound-alike, look-alike issues, different concerns related to adverse effects, disease-related concerns, all kinds of information. Now, this is medical terminology that a patient you don't normally want to read to a patient. And then it's a ton of reference material. So 4 out of the 11 pages are reference material. So it is, everything's cited. The orange asterisk icon, this is your allergy class and food interaction. So if you click on that, it'll bring you a report for the food interactions, what foods to avoid, what foods not to change consumption on, and that kind of information in allergy-related concerns. See here how we added a pharmacy, we added the physician. It's just so easy. It's so easy for the nursing to communicate about these meds without being in the patient home, as long as they have that. Because sure enough, you'll find an issue in the patient's home. You call the doctor, he didn't call you back till after you left the home. Then when he does call you back, you want this information. You might not know the pharmacy if you're not in the home. So if it's added here, you can identify it. And again, you'll see these address books, so you can click on them and find the address for the specific pharmacy, and work numbers, fax numbers, any other numbers that are involved. And same thing for your physician. So if you're dealing with this patient and you want to go ahead and call them right now, you just click on that phone book and find their number and do it right then and there. And sure enough, when you call the doctor and he calls you, he's not going to be in front of his computer, and he's going to ask you, what pharmacy does he use? And you're going to have to know that, or you would like to know that, so you're not embarrassed. So I like that, have that information there, but that's all, up to you guys. The other thing you're going to see is these little black upside-down pyramid icons. Those are, I call them action item menus. It opens up a sub menu if you hover over it. If you do that on these meds, you'll get side effects, pharmacology. You can view that information, and then again, those are medical terminology. And then you have patient education in English and in Spanish. And the English, well, they're all the same, I guess, but it's layman's terms. You could copy and paste this if you taught on this. If this is a new med and you taught on it during your visit, you could copy and paste this into your narrative that you taught on all this. You could print this off. There's a little printer icon in here, or you can do a control print or a browser print and print this off, and then again, take it back out to your patient on the next visit or whatever. But these are layman's terms, so it's really good information for those patients. You also have the ability to, change those dosages. Now, just FYI, there's trash cans next to these because they're not attached to an order that I've saved yet. They are already flowing to the 485, but I haven't been in the 485 and hit save. Once you do that, these trash cans will be removed, and you actually have to remove the med from the order and then come back here to be able to see the trash can so you can delete it. But you do have that option in the beginning while you're still, getting this med profile built correctly. You still have those options to get rid of those until they pull to that order. If a med changes, whether the dosage changed or it discontinued, all you have to do is click on the name of the med, and it's going to open up that same window. And then you can choose the entry type to change or discontinue, whichever's appropriate. If you change the dosage, what it's going to end up doing is dating the old dosage as of the day before the start date of the new dosage. So it does it automatically for you. It's only like a one process thing. And then if you discontinue them, it's going to remove them, making it inactive. And again, when you come here, inactive meds will not be displayed initially, but you can filter them to show the inactive or all. and then you would see the end dates in there. So that's kind of how you're going to manage the meds. Again, you're going to be able to do this inside. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I didn't tell you everything. I forgot a lot of stuff. Drug-to-drug interactions. If there are more than one medication in there, you're going to get that list, and it's going to tell you the severity level between what two drugs. And then if you hover over that little icon to the right of that, it'll tell you what the interaction information is. Again, medical terminology and some reference material in here. This, you could still copy and paste this if you wanted to, but it's not really what you normally do. So I forgot to tell you about that. As far as printing the med profile, if you click on that, well, actually, I'll show you the med kit too, even though it's for hospice more than anything. They use med kits to where they can pick the kit that they want and add an entire kit of medication that they would use for their patient types. For your home health, you won't see that, but it basically adds multiple meds. They will have the same entry type and start date for all of them, but that's an option that they have, and that's how they'll also do mass and activate too because of those kits. You can print the medication profile. You can print it with drug interactions or just the major interactions. You can include inactive meds, classifications, pharmacy address, patient's date of birth, primary physician, and primary physician's fax, and you can even filter it to only print the meds with a start date greater than or equal to whatever date you enter in this field. And then you can export, and it'll create a PDF version of that med profile with all the information you asked for. This med profile can actually be faxed to anybody as well by clicking on the fax medication profile. And again, you can include whatever you want. Just like when you print the med profile and you can hit export, then it'll give you a fax cover sheet where you can enter the fax number, attention to, and any text for the cover page. And then if you ever wanted to, you can actually click on this medication list PDF right here. Before you download it, it will download to your computer, and you can open it up and make sure everything looks good. But it's going to send exactly what's on that med profile and what you chose. There's also the approved medication profile option. Some agencies have nurses do this every single visit to reconcile meds. Some have them do them on, OASIS visits, rocks, starter cares, research, things like that. It's up to your agency administrators, but to do this function, you click on approved medication profile, and it's going to bring up this little window. Just so you know, anytime you have to sign anything, you don't have to go through here and find your name in this list. If you just hit enter approval signature and then hit accept, it'll filter it to your name anyway, so just to save you some time. And then you can enter any comments about approving this medication profile. And what I like about this, it does give you, it will create an interim order for the major drug interactions if you click this checkbox. But the verbiage is very minimal. It'll just say there's a major drug interaction between warfarin and aspirin, and that's it. So that other information is on the when you print the med profile. And then just hit save.
Brendan, yeah. in that box, is that where, depending on our process, a clinician would type, they wouldn't send it for an interim order, but this is where they could type physician aware of interaction and wants to continue with meds as ordered or something like that, so that we at least acknowledge the physician's aware and we're continuing, or does it need to always go back to the physician or as an interim order?
Well, they could absolutely document that here, but that's not really proof that they truly did talk to the doctor. So you do want to enter that, create the interim order for the major drug interactions, and then you can add additional documentation in the order. And then those case communications for the interactions will go out just like your orders do, but they don't require that doctor to sign it. So if they type something in here, it's not really proof that they did it. I mean, they're attesting to it that they did it, and they're signing it saying that they did it. But I think it's a little bit better managed, and they could still say that they did it here, but I think it's a little bit better to do this, because then you know that it went to the physician and they were notified.
What does the physician see on their side?
I'm sorry?
when we click interim order and it goes to the physician, what is the physician seeing?
Well, first of all, if you click on that, you're going to get this, it's going to create this case communication, and you're going to see it says major drug interactions. Now, this is the one I just created, and this is all that's in that verbiage box. Major drug interactions, warfarin and aspirin, it's major. That's all it is. It's not even very clear to me. So it doesn't give you a lot of information. So if you want that other information, like I did on one of the other trainings, I got that information from I either did it from here or the other one, but you can come down here to the interaction information. Oops. I got rid of the aspirin. That's why there's no interactions at all. Let me get that fixed.
When you got rid of that aspirin because it was discontinued, can you reactivate it? Or do you have to always make a new one?
In this case, I can reactivate it because I haven't done anything on my 485. If it's on the 485, you're basically going to have to get it off of the 485, then come in here and you can make those changes. Again, if it's pulled to that 485 or a clinical update order, these trash cans will be gone. Then the only way you can actually change it is by clicking on it and change the dosage. But what it'll end up doing is looking like they truly were on this med previously. It was just a different dosage. So it's better to completely get rid of it and enter it back in, or make sure that those trash cans are there. As those trash cans are there, you can come in here and click on the med and go ahead and edit it, and it'll pull it right back to the 485.
Okay.
What if we're,
So in the beginning,
what if we have a medication that's
Yeah,
on hold?
I'm
Are you
sorry.
able to, what if you have a medication that's on hold, like say you're holding the Coumadin for 3 days? Would be able
Okay.
to,
You can do a hold. You can place meds on hold by clicking on the hovering over that action item menu and do manage hold history, and then you can put your hold date, start date. Let me just show you what it looks like. Well, and you can put any comments in there. Now, if this is an order, again, you can write the verbiage in here. The doctor, hold Coumadin times 3 days, whatever it might be. Enter that information and then create an interim order. It will pull this information into an order. Now, you still have to go back to that order and sign it, but this will help save some steps. Now, if a medication is on hold, it's going to be in red font, and it's going to say that it's on hold. Now, you do have to come back in here if you did not enter an end date for that hold. It's going to automatically just keep it on hold for, 58 years. So you can enter the actual hold end date here. We'll say it was just for something like that. Then it will flow back to the normal font color, and it won't stay on hold after that hold date. Now, you're always going to have that hold history so that you can view that when it was on hold, and you'll have, more than one history sometimes. And then, of course, you can add new hold dates, etc. Edit the old ones if it was incorrect, but you have those options here. Okay, so one of those things, I pulled that information from one of the drug interaction. I think it was from the when I printed the profile, but you can see I just copied and pasted that information into that order. And again, this isn't truly an order. It doesn't have to be signed by a physician. It's just notifying the physician. Sometimes they don't really care about all this other information. They just want to know, especially when there's meds ordered by multiple physicians. Otherwise, they already know, but still required to tell them. So you still come in here and sign it.
You sign it, and when it gets to the physician, though, is it very clear that we don't need a signature, that this is just an FYI?
Typically, yeah. I mean, sometimes they will. They'll still sign them and send them back. But it does say physician signature not required after you approve this. So that they usually don't sign them, but sometimes they just some doctors are good and sign everything. Some won't sign the things they need to sign. But yeah, missed visit communications, case communications, none of those require a physician signature. And this is what it'll look like. This is what the actual order looks like after it's faxed. So it'll say up at the top that this is a case communication. Of course, it'll have the physician information. This fake physician doesn't have anything. Has the patient information over here. Most of your order headers look the same, other than your 485 looks a little bit different. Has your contact information up here at the top for your agency. Everything that you wrote in that verbiage box or copied and pasted will be in there. It does say there is a spot for them to sign, but they and you may need to just kind of notify them, but hey, the case communications don't need to be signed. Or if they sign them, just go ahead and upload them signed. I mean, that's even more acknowledgement that they got it, you know. So yeah, but the way these work, and as far as the billing side, you know, when you do a final bill, all your orders need to have a receive date, except for case communications. They don't need that receive date. They just need to be sent, and they're managed just like all the rest of your orders.
And does this get sent on a cover sheet goes on it?
Yes, yeah. When they fax out, and I can't really demonstrate it without setting some stuff up, but when they fax this to the physician, there is a cover sheet that goes out with it.
And we could write on the cover sheet or type on there. Is there a box to then maybe say, just for your information? I'm just trying to predict, because as these go out, the other end physician is going to say, why are you
absolutely, yeah, I completely understand. Well, I can just show you real quick, and I'll just do it for this training agency. And you know, we have a million rules in here. What's it called? Right here, faxing cover page, allow verbiage override, and it's already on for this agency. So you guys will already have that option, or at least for the training agency. It should be already on for the other ones, but there is that rule. As long as you turn it on, you guys can edit the cover page to say anything you want.
Okay.
No signature required.
Is that something you check behind the scenes, or is that something I need to do?
I can do it for you. Hold on. Fax, verbiage, override. I'll have to just go through each one. I'm not going to waste our time right this second, but I will go through all of those. No problem. Okay. So anyway, yeah, you can definitely edit that as long as that rule's on. So that was the meds profile. I think we finally got through it. Now, when we do get approval histories, this approval history drop-down box will show up. So if there are none, this box won't be here. But as long as there are, you can click on that. So when you approve that medication profile, it's a snapshot of what the med profile is at the time you approved it. So it's a little bit of an audit trail and just showing that you guys are addressing the meds appropriately and when, and then it will show your name and the date that it was approved. And they can click on each one of these and see what that med profile was at the time you approved it. So it's kind of it's just helpful information. But but they'll be able to view every single one of those approval histories. And there's other things the office will be able to do with all that information as well. The next tab is the orders tab, and we're going to have to come back to this for sure. We're definitely running out of time today. But just FYI, and we'll go over all the different order types, how to add them, how to do scheduling, frequencies and durations, care needs, all of the things that we're going to need to do. They're going to be in our next meeting. So we're going to pick up where we left off. So I'll come back to this since we're going to hit it pretty hard on the next training. Also, your OASIS. When you do an OASIS integrated assessment service, so it's a service note that has locators that pull to your 485 for like your diet, mental status, prognosis, DMEs, things like that. Your diagnoses will flow. Of course, it'll go to coding, and then they'll change everything anyway. Your OASIS is kind of sort of stripped out. It's just pulled over here because when we don't transmit your whole service note to state. We just transmit the Mo questions and GG questions, etc. So only the OASIS will be pulled out of your notes. It'll still be visible when you look at your note, but it's going to be managed after the fact over here. So after coding's been done and the office reviews it, they'll end up approving it. So you'll see those OASIS under here on the orders tab as well. You guys will not use services requested or the diagnosis codes for paraprofessional services. That's for caregiver side. This would be to plot services without an order, which you guys do not want to do. The payer tab, this is where the payers are going to be applied to the patient. So this is going to be helpful so you guys know, who the payer is and what services you might be able to provide, and your frequencies, what you might be able to do. So if it is a payer that requires authorization, so to view these auths, you can come to that payer tab, and underneath the auths column, you can just click on this little icon. Now, if something is red and incomplete, it's going to be red like that, but if everything's good and clean and there's no errors, it'll be green. And you click on these little icons, and it'll take you into that payer authorizations tab. So you can view what auth you have for your discipline, the date range, the amount of hours or units, etc. So you guys may need to be able to find that information. That's where you're going to find it. If the office uploads some kind of supporting documentation they received over a fax or print off from the computer, they can upload that authorization information up here, so it's viewable as well, and you just click on the document description. And you guys won't worry about any of this other stuff. To back up easily, just so you know when you're in something like this that doesn't just have patient encountering, if you just come up here to the encounter, just move back one, you can click on that encounter, and then it'll just go back to this patient's encounter instead of going all the way back to patient encounters and finding the patient again. I mean, you can do that in multiple instances. So we're pretty much out of time. Just a couple things. I will tell you these menu options will change up here, up at the top. You won't see a discharged patient if the patient has never been activated. If the patient's active, you'll see an option to put them on hold. And we're going to kind of go through some of those processes because when you do a resumption of care, you have to go through all of that and a discharge. So we'll discuss this on our next meeting as well. So we have about 7 minutes left. Do you guys have any questions for me on what we've covered so far? Unmute the lines if you're muted. Everybody.
We have an email option.
Okay, I have unmuted you.
Oh, I have a question. With the fax option, is there an email option for like patients that would like the forms and maybe, instead of having to get it printed, like would we be able to have email capabilities?
Not straight from like the forms. So for like these forms, you would literally have to, you can create a PDF version and then of course you'd have to download this and then insert it in an email manually. Of course, there's the family portal that they can get access to where they can log in and view this kind of information and grab them. And I think Christy's going to do some training over that, I believe, or I may do it later down the road. But there's not an email option to be able to send these forms to them.
Is there an email option to email the medication list to them, not a form?
The medications, let me see, I don't think we're going to still have that option, no. So the meds, no, there's only a fax option.
So there is a family portal, though, that we haven't touched on. That's, like you said, down the road, where there's certain things in Care Efficient that we will give patients' families and patients' rights to. And then they would log in and they can see, not everything, but certain things.
Okay.
And we would give them permission to see, their consent forms or their medication list, that kind of a thing. And try to keep it all electronic, but for now, we'll have to print. And we'll continue the process because you already have medical records. It's printing this and sending it to every patient, the med list right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're physically getting them to the patients. We'll continue that until we change our policy and access the portal.
I believe you do have the option to email physicians' orders if they're set up correctly, and I think that's something they do a little bit more on the hospice side some too, with the Christy normally I think goes over that, but I think there is an option to email orders to physicians, but everything else is more or less a fax option or print option. That's not saying that that's not coming in the future, because I'm telling you, we're doing enhancements constantly and trying to make the system better, more user-friendly, and have more functionality for some of that stuff. It just depends on how easy or hard that kind of stuff is to set up and, cost and stuff. So we have to review everything. But I think that family portal would be a really good option for what you're talking about right now, of course, when you're ready. Now, in the next training, we're going to pick up where we left off. We'll talk about the orders. We'll talk about scheduling, adding service notes and OASIS, and we'll go through those steps. And then again, hopefully we'll have a lot more time at the end of that training so that you guys can ask her all your follow-up questions. But then again, we're also going to I'm going to be on the call with you guys every day when you go live for a week, and then every other week, or weekly for 2 to 4 weeks, and then, as needed after that. So I'm not going to leave you guys high and dry. I'm always going to be here to answer your questions. It's probably best to kind of filter them through Molly and Jamie and everybody that I'm already communicating with, because I'm already getting a lot of emails. But you can call me as well after we go live. I'll walk you through things. Other support staff are available as well to help walk you through things. We're all here to help you guys. We don't want you to get frustrated. That's the worst thing that can happen. It's already a stressful situation transitioning into a new software, learning on all new software. But if you get stuck on something, don't get frustrated. Just go ahead and realize you're kind of stuck. Give us a call. Let us walk you through that kind of stuff, because we don't want you frustrated. We want to help you guys get through this as smoothly as possible. So with that, I don't have anything else for you guys for today. So, sure you don't have any more questions? You have me for one more minute.
Well, let's make up a question. What's the weather like where you are?
I have a question, Brendan. It's Jamie. I've been working with Leslie and the nursing leaders, and we're if we can talk to you tomorrow after 3, are you going to send me an invite? Does that time work for you?
Yes, I can definitely do that tomorrow at 3. And Great. Then also for, where's that? Delia for the intake. Now that one, we were gonna do, or I guess aim for today at 3. Yeah, it's kind of a little bit too tight for me. It'd be better if we could move that a little bit.
Okay, Delia is in the other room. She can answer. So you're saying today for intake at 3 is not good?
Okay, I'm sorry, I was talking to my team here, so 3's not good. What other time frames did you say?
Today I don't have anything. Tomorrow I'm gonna end up. Let's see. You guys you're saying I'm in Central Time, so I've got to. You get there around 8:30, so it'll be 10:30 my time. I mean, I have an hour before we have another other call at 9 o'clock. If you were to want to try it early tomorrow, otherwise we're gonna have to move it to. It's an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half. That's an hour and a half. Tomorrow will be completely booked up. But Thursday, I have a lot more time. I have time other than the 9 o'clock.
Let's do this,
meeting.
let's do this scheduling offline.
Yeah.
You guys
Yours
can-
is dead.
You guys can email Brendan, Delia, Jamie, you guys can kind of sort that out. So thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Delia, if you could bring the other crew into this room.
All right, thank you guys. You have a great day.
Thanks, Brendan.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.